Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Judiah McRoberts. Judiah, please tell us where you are in the world and what you do for a living.
Absolutely. I'm on the beautiful island of Kauai in Hawaii, and I'm the president of Kauai Hemp Company.
Amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of approach getting into this space? I mean, obviously, CBD is a huge, massively growing product line in this post-COVID and even before. So you could tell us a little bit about, how you got interested in the space. Do you have a background in it? And also, what was kind of like the catalyst to you taking, what was an idea into a full-blown brand this way?
Sure. My background's actually in nursing. I got my nursing degree in 2008 and worked in a variety of different long-term care settings, school education, Department of Education, and eventually settled in 2011 with a home healthcare company, at which point I started working with a pediatric client who was going through seizure disorders. Parents tried everything. Eventually, they moved to Colorado from Hawaii and got turned on to CBD. And this was about 2013. They came back, moved to Hawaii from Colorado with taking CBD, and amazing results from pre-CBD to post-CBD. This client was pre-CBD having upward of 300 seizures a day. Post was like 10. Yeah. And so seeing that, pretty amazed at the time. Kind of an unconventional treatment. In 2013, this is pre-Farm Bill. So it was still not fully kosher, especially with pediatric clients at this time. But yeah, to see how powerful it was, I was definitely inspired. Fast forward to 2019, this incredible opportunity through Kauai Hemp Company came up. I was onboarded with the initial founding team, and we got just started doing the hemp thing.
That's amazing, man. And but I met with a few other hemp companies that come on the podcast so that I've just done interviews with, and I know anything with cannabinoids is still kind of difficult, seeing as it's still a scheduled drug per se through the federal government. So what kind of challenges did you have to deal with like in the early stages of a business like this, especially somewhere in Hawaii where I can imagine the logistics of importing ingredients and things to actually create the product is probably a challenge in and of itself. What was your kind of product development roadmap like from 2019 to kind of your initial launch with the product?
Absolutely. So 2019, we started the business. We didn't have a fully baked business plan per se. We're just kind of throwing darts at a wall as far as deciding what the best path forward with us. So we started with a fully integrated seed to shelf model. We grow all the hemp on our property, we process it all, we manufacture it all, we do all the shipping from our facility as well. But we did open up other lines as far as like private labeling. We also do some consulting, B2B, as well as B2C. With CBD, there are some difficulties that don't naturally present themselves with other industries. Marketing's a huge challenge for us. We can't do any form of paid advertising due to the restrictions, as well as like the ever-changing landscape of legislation. Seems like every year there's new rules, federal and state, that either close doors for us or open doors for us. So it's been a challenge. And on top of that, we literally opened our facility 3 weeks before COVID hit. It was a huge challenge, especially being so remote. Our island shut down, did not allow anyone to come to the islands for a solid 2 weeks, especially when we were trying to go through a lot of figuring out the kinks of the business. It was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, no, I know it's such a common story I hear, just like pivots people had to make during COVID. And I know you're not in really like a big digital advertising world because you can't in this business, unfortunately. But there's kind of like the two big things that come up a lot when you think about marketing in any industry. It seems is obviously pivots you had to make during COVID, how things are rebounding from COVID, and also there was a big iOS 14 pivot that a lot of people had to make, where a lot of like privacy policy change happened between Apple and Meta. So that was always a big challenge too. But so how have you found kind of in 2024? Can you give me some examples of some things? I guess like from the regulatory side, I'm just curious, things that have kind of worked to your advantage as a CBD brand, and some things that have happened recently that have kind of been created challenges that you had to overcome.
I think the biggest challenges that we face is that each state has their unique rules surrounding CBD.
Right.
To be able to navigate each state can be difficult. For instance, Hawaii doesn't allow any CBD to be placed in an edible product, whereas a state like California and Colorado does.
Right.
And so being able to navigate that has definitely been a challenge. I guess some of the benefits from recent legislation is they seem to be cracking down on some of the derivatives, cannabinoid derivatives. the D8s, the D10s, and these are cannabinoids that they mimic THC like products. And, our position has been they're not true hemp products. They're just loopholes for people to get into the THC market. So we do see a lot of states cracking down on that, which has helped provide us a little clearer pathway forward to cement ourselves as a legitimate hemp brand.
That makes sense. Yeah. Because I know in New York, for example, where I am, when you go into a bodega or something, that's all you see is like Delta 8, Delta 10. It's like, I don't even know what this stuff means. I look into it a little bit and it's like, I see it's more of like it's basically like a loophole for synthesis, right? Yeah, I can see that. So it just kind of helps you create like a dichotomy between like, what is hemp and what really isn't, where like the people know if you're CBD, not this Delta 10 or Delta 8, that you're a legit, cannabinoid, like therapeutic business and not just like a loophole player, basically. So I know you mentioned a few different kind of like revenue streams that you're in. You do some private labeling, you do some D2C, do some B2B. What is your main revenue channel right now between all of those? But what has kind of experienced the fastest growth and the most kind of acceleration in the past few years? Would you say?
Yeah, we initially started, at least the goal was to be more of a white labeling company. When COVID hit, that became just not a possibility. And so we moved into more of the direct consumer model and releasing our own line. And that has done very well for us over the past couple of years.
That's awesome. And that's kind of stuck even up until today. That's still the biggest side of your business. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as far as your shipping goes, do you ship worldwide? Is it just in the US? I know that's a whole nother like international regulatory conversation is even more complicated, obviously. Yeah. So do you stick with just the US for now, or have you kind of looked into, or are you doing any international right now?
We are actually.
Oh, wow.
In the past year, we are positioning ourselves to be into the Japanese market, which is even more restrictive than the US market. But because it is so restrictive, there are very few cannabinoid brands in the Japanese market, which actually gives us a strategic advantage, being that we will be the only Hawaii-based brand over there. And it's an emerging market over there. It's completely new to them. And I do think that that's going to be the trend moving forward, that you're going to see some consolidation in the US market, but you're also going to see these new emerging international markets pop up. They're around different countries.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I know the hemp plant in and of itself is so versatile. It can be kind of grown almost anywhere in a ton of different climates, right? So yeah, so I could definitely see that as legislation changes in international markets. It's going to be really interesting to see. But in saying that, it's really interesting because I think it's been a topic of conversation for well over a decade now, so at least in the United States. And I feel like there's still so many misconceptions, misnomers out there. So obviously, a big part of doing a brand like you are is obviously around consumer education, right? So what kind of strategies do you utilize? People come to the website, or any things you maybe send out as far as like maybe a newsletter or something? What is your basic like message to folks when you're doing that kind of education side of selling?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. There's so much confusion, so much misinformation between what CBD is versus what cannabis is. Is it going to get me high? Am I going to fail a drug test? What is this useful for? And so we built our platform on consumer education. And obviously our website provides a great amount of research and information, but we do send out newsletters constantly. And I think that's going to be the backbone for a lot of brands moving forward, is just consumer education, because there's just so much misinformation out there. And common experience we get when people come to us is, I tried CBD at a gas station once, and, either I got really high, or it didn't work, or it tasted terrible. And so, authenticity, being clear, providing education for us is paramount.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you find is like one of the biggest like misconceptions you find around, people that might be interested in CBD as a legitimate, therapeutic to an issue they might be having? What do you find are like the biggest blockers you think for people as far as like misconceptions go?
I think it's most people still think it as cannabis, right? They think they're going to get high. They think it's illegal. Yeah. The psychoactivity, that seems to be the number one misconception that we face with our consumer base.
No, that definitely makes sense. And on that same coin, I guess, as far as your D2C business goes, obviously, D2C is so great. You get this like direct customer interaction and feedback, and kind of just a direct line to open a dialogue with your customers. So have you been able to kind of pinpoint, as far as your D2C business goes, like what kinds of problems that people are looking to solve when they're looking into your brand specifically?
There's a number of ailments, but the two primary ones seem to be sleep. People are having difficulty with their sleep health, and then stress and anxiety seem to be another one that are common modalities that people come to us for solutions.
That makes sense. I think that's some of the most common remedy sides of like benefits of CBD, I think, and just like the regular, public sentiment. What would you say to, somebody wants to learn more about CBD and like maybe some of the other not as well-known benefits of, maybe using CBD on a regular basis, or other things that people should be aware that CBD is a very legitimate answer to solving?
I think doing your due diligence and research is the first place to start. And, there are a bunch of legitimate brands out there that have cemented themselves as good players in the industry. industry. Unfortunately, the feds haven't allowed us to do proper clinical trials. And so we have limited hard evidence that we can use. But again, a consumer is interested in CBD and they have questions. I think the first place would be reach out to the brand that you're looking at and ask them the questions that are pertinent to you. And if they don't respond, it's usually a bad sign.
Right. No, I think that's good advice. And I mean, it definitely makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why I think there's still so many misnomers and misconceptions is because it's effectively being blocked, by the Fed, not like taking the necessary steps to make sure people are informed via the government. But not, also on the same token, not allowing brands, who are passionate about these things and are doing it in the right way and are very legitimate to also go about doing that themselves. So there's really no vehicle, it seems, to really get people educated on the potential benefits and misnomers and things surrounding, cannabinoids and CBD. What do you find? I mean, going back to kind of the fact that you can't really run like digital paid advertising. So what kind of modes are you kind of left to utilizing in order to, drive revenue through a website and, from Hawaii to the rest of the United States and hopefully international?
We do a lot of in-person events. We found that is actually the best way for us to get out there. We were just in California for the Natural Products Expo West. Just get in front of the consumers is what we found the best way to get that feedback and the education. It doesn't scale well, but I think it's an invaluable source for us. Markets, expos, we do a lot of traveling.
And I'm curious, like on the private labeling side of things, what would you say is kind of like the percentage of the revenue that you're getting doing that side of the business? And how do you even begin to like start to have those conversations with brands? Do you get approached mostly from other people looking to, use it? Or is it more of like a cold outreaching strategy to garnish those relationships?
Yeah, I'd say it's less than 10% of our revenue stream. And we don't actively advertise, I would say, our private labeling services. It's people coming up to us, hey, I like your brand. I have some ideas of what I would love to create. And we're like, okay, let's see how we can make that dream come a reality.
So that's cool. So it's more just like a collaborative. Somebody's really into it. They just kind of know you or meet you somehow. It's not really something you actively are seeking out as a like real revenue stream.
Yeah, we made that pivot during COVID.
Yeah.
And it served us well, actually.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And so I guess it's like, pre-COVID leading up to that, I'm curious, private labeling is not something I get to have a lot of conversations about. We do a lot of interviews in the CPG space and apparel space. So, while it's obviously active in those industries, I can imagine something like this is probably a little bit more prevalent for a brand like yours. So, how would that have looked, do you think, barring COVID? How do those like conversations kind of go? And what kind of also like regulatory issues do you run into in doing that? I mean, that obviously probably poses like a whole different kind of like issues with the collaborations that go on and the partnerships and money changing hands and things. So I'm just a little curious about that. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, sure. It was our initial business model was to be a private labeler and a toll processor. It's difficult because there are so many laws surrounding what you can and can't say, how you have to label the product, and it changes state to state. And so the initial discussion, I think, that we have with customers is nothing's going to happen fast. This is not something that you can come to us and, hey, I want to create this new brand with CBD inside of it. Slow down. Let's look at the laws surrounding this first, if we can even do that. And then create a path forward, but understand because of legislation and rules that this is not, I want to create a new protein potato chip and we can just pump it out.
Right. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I guess one question I always like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast, watching the podcast with me on them, see, I always ask this question. Obviously, it's been a long roadmap for you. Had to make a big pivot right during COVID. There's like, unfortunately, probably some of the worst timing to come up with a business plan in like 2019, 2020. Kind of knowing everything you know now, everything you've learned over the years with your product development and learning about the regulatory side of this business and having to make the pivots that you have. If you can go back to 2019, I guess, aside from don't think about private labeling because COVID's coming, what would be your biggest piece of advice to yourself, would you say?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably start smaller, believe it or not. The team that we had in the leadership at the time really was trying to be a part of, I guess, the green rush, the bubble at the time.
Right.
And so we built big and fast, which in hindsight probably was not the best move. We started at a smaller scale and then a little bit more product development, customer outreach, and then built up. So that's probably what I would have done differently. Now we're fine, but there are some reverberations of some of the mistakes that we made in 2019, 2020 with just going big fast.
Right. Yeah. You may or may not be surprised. It's actually a very common answer I get to that question. Just kind of, stick with like gather the data first, get the feedback first, like get a real feel for like where your growth patterns actually are going to be first, like in a really clear way rather than just like basically, I think you said throwing darts at the wall before. It's like, that can just be costly. You waste time, waste money. And then like, you probably could have figured that out beforehand if you do just a little more patient. So I think it's a good insight for any new entrepreneurs or younger entrepreneurs. And when I say younger, I don't mean by age. engaged, just like anybody who's maybe off in a venture for the first time. I think it's really good advice, and it's something that comes up often. So I can kind of affirm that that's something that I think should be listened to if anybody's listening to the podcast. Another entrepreneur.
Start with that minimum viable product and iterate.
Exactly. I think especially with D2C, just because there's such good interaction there, no matter what industry you're in. It's a great place to start if you don't have a real like immediate local community that's easy to kind of get things out, like something you could bring to a farm market, or if you're in something like CBD. Obviously it's always a little tricky to get into like institutions for like sampling and things, but it's really interesting. And I also just want to give you, Judiah, a quick opportunity just to plug your website. I know you can't do paid ads, but you can certainly shout out the website on the pod today. It's free advertising. So let people know they listen to the pod, they like you, they want to keep in touch with this brand and learn more about CBD in general. Let them know how to stay in touch with you guys.
Absolutely. So you can find us at Kauai Hemp Co. That's KauaiHempCo.com. You can find us on all socials as well at Kauai Hemp Co. Drop us a line, email, call. You can visit us on our farm. We have a little farm stand Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, right there off of Coloa Road. Come visit us, say hi, learn about what we're doing here, and check us out.
Awesome. Jai, I love your story. Thank you so much for the insights. It's really important. It's obviously still a very new and up-and-coming space. I think there's going to be a lot of new entrepreneurs trying to get into this space. So I'm sure they appreciate your insights as much as I do. So I want to say thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us, Matt.
Yep. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time, and wish you continued luck and success.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Right,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.